Today, we'll be covering a fascinating topic. But before we do that, how would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. Let's get into the video. Spanish is one of the most popular native languages in the world, bested only by Mandarin and Hindi. More people speak Spanish as their first language than English, yet Spain is not currently one of the most influential countries globally. Some think it is nothing more than a sleepy tourist destination that has shared bullfighting and siestas with the world. However, Spain is a lot more than just a country on the western edge of Europe. Throughout history, Spain has been critical to the development of empires, the discovery of new lands, and the testing of political ideologies that have served as warnings to the world. The world today would be a much poorer place without the uniquely Spanish influence it has had. And here are 6 reasons why Spain is an important part of world history. Number 1. Fighting over Spain accidentally started the Second Punic War. When the Romans were getting their first footholds into the Mediterranean, Spain was called the Iberian Peninsula. For the ancient people, Spain represented the end of the known world. It controlled one half of the Pillars of Hercules, which today is called the Straits of Gibraltar. This natural landmark stands at the entrance to the Mediterranean Sea from the Atlantic Ocean. The Romans found other interests to occupy them, and in 264 BCE, they were busy fighting a series of wars with Carthage for control of the Mediterranean. The First Punic War ended badly for Carthage. They needed money to pay off war debts and regain some of the territories they had lost. Hamilcar Barca recruited a new army and went to the Iberian Peninsula, where he quickly gained access to the gold and silver mines through a combination of battles and alliances with local tribes. Hamilcar continued to conquer the Iberian tribes and take land for Carthage, and he even managed to hold off the Romans by saying that he was gathering money for Carthage's war debts. Technically, he wasn't lying, but nothing could hold the Romans back for long. They were increasingly concerned about the Carthaginian presence in Iberia, so they made the military leaders there sign the Ebro Treaty. It stated that neither side would cross the Ebro River in northern Iberia. The treaty was signed in 226 BCE. By 219 BCE, war had broken out again between these two powers. It all began with Saguntum, a city that was also a Roman ally. Rome helped it settle their civil war, and then recommended that they execute anyone who supported the Carthaginians. By this time, Hamilcar had died, and his son Hannibal had taken over the army. He was furious to see how Saguntum was treating Carthage's allies. In retaliation, Hannibal took the city for Carthage. Even though Saguntum was south of the Ebro River, the Romans claimed that Hannibal had broken the treaty. They demanded that Carthage hand over Hannibal and return Saguntum. When Carthage refused, the Second Punic War began, launching Hannibal, one of the greatest ancient military generals, into the history books. Number 2. Islam first came to Europe through Spain. Islam spread quickly across the Middle East and, during the Umayyad Caliphate, into North Africa. In 710 CE, Musa ibn Nasir, a governor in Muslim North Africa, sent out a raid on Iberia. Tariq ibn Ziyad took mostly Berbers with him. After arriving at the Spanish side of Gibraltar, he fought King Roderick of the Visigothic army and eventually defeated them, leaving a clear path for Islamic forces. They conquered Iberia one territory at a time, moving east into the central areas of the peninsula. They did not focus on the northern regions because that was too inhospitable. They needed good economic areas, for although spreading their religion was important, it was not the primary reason for the Islamic invasion of Spain, which was also called Al-Andalus by the Muslims. They usually allowed people to continue practicing their religion, but they made them pay a special tax called jizya. Some aristocrats converted to Islam to maintain their power, but most of the population remained Christian. The conflicting religions did create tension in the 10th century. Al-Mansur became the chancellor, but he was only the ruler of Iberia because the caliph was young. Al-Mansur was determined that all of Iberia would acknowledge his sovereignty, so he went on a violent military campaign that specifically targeted Christian areas. His assaults were ruthless. But he did not occupy the places he plundered, so most people returned and carried on with their lives and religions. The Islamic forces brought changes in culture and architecture with them. Much of the traditional Spanish architecture today was heavily influenced by Islamic geometric patterns and mosque constructions. They never managed to drive Christianity from Spain, though. It lived on amongst the common people and in the kingdom of the northern mountains. As the Islamic taifas, independent Muslim principalities and kingdoms of the Iberian Peninsula, began fighting amongst themselves, the Christian kingdoms began expanding back into Spain. The battles against the Islamic people became religious in the 12th and 13th centuries as the Christian forces took back possession of Spain. The last Muslim hold on Spain was the Emirate of Granada, but it dissolved in 1492. Even though Islam did not maintain power in Spain, it was influential for centuries, completely changing the development of Spanish culture and representing the first significant incursion of Islam into Europe. Number 3. The Spanish Inquisition lasted over 350 years. The Spanish Inquisition lasted from 1478 to 1834, but it had the most power and influence during the Middle Ages. Officially, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella were looking to unite the country under one religion. They intended the Inquisition to root out heretics in the Christian faith, but their policy had other benefits. Historians disagree about whether there were different motivations or what all those motives were, but the Spanish Inquisition weakened opposition to the Catholic crown, decreased the political power of the minority, and strengthened the economic power of the state. The state confiscated the accused's property upon imprisonment or sentencing. The Spanish Inquisition didn't create unity. Instead, disunity, mistrust, and censorship ruled the day. The Inquisition targeted anyone who might hold a different belief than the Catholic faith, including Jews, Muslims, recent converts to Christianity, and heretics. Neighbor turned in neighbor. Once accused, a person had no rights, and the interrogation process usually involved torture and other secret practices. Sentencing was an elaborate public affair. The Inquisition is famous for burning people at the stake, but not everyone suffered this punishment. There were milder punishments for being found guilty of breaking one of the Inquisition's rules, including imprisonment. The Inquisition became less severe as time went on, and it was suppressed several times in the 1800s before it was officially abolished in 1834. It was fueled by fear, and it remains one of the most famous Inquisitions in history, showing us the dangers of eliminating diversity. Number 4. Spanish colonization in Central and South America reshaped the New World. Christopher Columbus was Italian, but Spain financed his journeys to the New World. He approached King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella and convinced them to fund his trip across the Atlantic to the Indies. Although Columbus did not find the Indies, his discovery of the New World still set all of Europe into a fever of colonization. In the search for gold, Spain sent out the conquistadors, who have become infamous in the Americas as they destroyed the Aztecs, Maya, and Incas in their quest for the gold and silver that swelled the Spanish coffers back in Europe. They continued to claim land for Spain. By the 1500s, Spain owned almost half of the western portion of the New World, making it the most extensive European empire. In the place of the indigenous civilizations, they set up New Spain and sent settlers to build cities, towns, and farms. They also sent enslaved Africans to do the heavy labor of growing sugar and mining silver. Spain also exported vanilla beans and cacao, introducing them to Europe and revolutionizing desserts. Spain completely restructured Central and South America. They built cities, imposed Catholicism on the native people, and established colonies regardless of the indigenous tribes. The indigenous people were given land to farm, but they had to pay tribute to the Spanish overlords. The Spanish conquerors quickly created a class system based on race, with Spanish-born Spaniards at the top and indigenous and mixed people at the bottom. While their New World colonies made Spain wealthy for a while, they weren't enough to stop its eventual decline. When the colonies declared their independence throughout the 1800s, Spain was not strong enough to stop them. By 1898, Spain had lost most of its territories, but the effects of Spanish colonization can still be seen today in Central and South America as the countries work to establish their own identities. With the loss of its colonies, Spain ceased to be a major world power. but it is still an essential part of modern history. Number 5. The Spanish Armada lost, and Spain lost its world dominance. The Spanish Armada was an essential part of the Spanish plan at the height of their power to invade England. The Armada was a naval fleet of about 150 ships, so it was the largest fleet that Europe had ever seen. People thought it was invincible when it set sail in 1588, and England appeared to be a convenient target for King Philip II of Spain. There had been conflict between England and Spain for years. England's Protestantism was offensive to Catholic Spain, who wanted to convert them to the true religion. The two countries had also competed economically and politically for possession of the New World. The English had also resorted to piracy against Spanish ships and supported rebels against Spain. All of this combined to create a perfect storm, and Philip II decided that the only way to handle England was to absorb it into the Spanish Empire. Even though England was not a world power at the time, taking over a whole island was a massive undertaking. It took nearly 2 years to get the Spanish Armada ready, and they knew that even the best Spanish ships were slower and less well-armed than the English ships. They counted on boarding to win the battle and the island because the Spanish infantry was superior. However, the battle went far differently than expected. The English sent in 8 fireships to discombobulate the Armada and leave them scattered. After breaking the Armada's formation, the English attacked, using better guns and favorable winds. By that afternoon, the remains of the Armada were driven out to sea. Many ships were then lost on the trip home to Spain, wrecking on the Scottish and Irish coasts and running afoul with storms. The defeat of the Spanish Armada was a significant blow to Spain. It also helped to launch England as a significant European power, because this was also the first important naval exchange to use guns as a decisive factor in the battle. Number 6. Fascist leanings in Spain kept Spain from being truly neutral in World War II. The Spanish Civil War began in 1936 between the nationalist and Republican parties. By 1939, Francisco Franco had taken over the government and crushed the Republican resistance. Anyone who opposed him was sent to concentration camps or prisons, which became a haven for illness and death. Franco became the chief of state and the prime minister, and he suppressed the various political factions that did not agree with the nationalist agenda. He even offered support to Hitler during World War II, but only in an unofficial capacity by allowing Spanish soldiers to serve with the Germans early in the war. After the war, the other countries were suspicious of him and refused to allow Spain to join the United Nations after the war. After Franco died in 1975, the country erupted into violence as the political groups rose once again to claim power. Strikes and massacres were a significant part of re-establishing Spain with a constitution, but the country finally established Spain as a democratic state in 1978. The country is still healing from its time under a fascist regime, reminding the world of the dangers of suppression and strength that arises from a free democratic society. To learn more about Spain's history, check out our book, History of Spain, a captivating guide to Spanish history starting from Roman Hispania through the Visigoths, the Spanish Empire, the Bourbons, and the War of Spanish Independence to the present. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Also, grab your free mythology bundle ebook while it's still available. All links are in the description. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.